It's slow. Hey, everybody, we're all here. I'm really happy. At the extreme end of the pond, we have Bill Carroll. In the middle of the pond, we have Lospinuso. At the other end of the pond, there's me, Zennie Abraham. How y'all doing? Guess what? Guess who's going to start? Drum roll, please. Trevor Lawrence. Yeah, and we're talking about the Saints. And we're talking about the Saints wearing all black. And we're talking about the fact that the Jaguars are coming in. And we're talking about the fact that Trevor Lawrence is starting. And so because of that, does that give him the ability to win because he's starting, or is he still banged up and he's going to get in for an early exit at the hands of the Saints number, 8th ranked defense? What's say?
I have the Jags. Frozen. I think the Jags are the better team right now, even though Lawrence is hurt. So I would say that because of how well the Jags have played the last few weeks, including 2 in London, and one against a banged-up Colts team, very, very sound victory. I think they're going to get the job done on short rest on Thursday night in New Orleans against the Saints. So I would think that Trevor Lawrence will do his business pretty well and helping to carve up the Saints defensive backs.
Yeah, I think that a lot
of... What say you, Bill? Bill, how's your reception?
I'm fine. I think a lot of what was just said was true. I think that the thing that I think will be the linchpin for the success of the Saints in this game is if they can establish 2 things. One, can they stop the running game of the Jaguars and get consistent pressure on a slightly injured Trevor Lawrence, which is a big question. And then even more importantly, can they protect their offensive line to struggle at times, their quarterback, against a Jaguars defense that is one of the tops in turnovers in the NFL? If they can avoid turnovers, if they can establish their running game, they have a chance to make this game very close. But I'm going to agree with Vinny. I think I'll give the slightest of edges. I think they probably win this game by about 2 points or 3 points to the Jaguars.
Wow. So I am not sure what to think. The Saints have this weird tendency of late to bounce back big whenever they've lost a game and they just look suckily bad, which has been the case at least twice this season. And well, we're talking about a 2-2 record, right? Or 2-3.
Right.
So you would say alarm bells, Thursday night football, pull out your best. I'm going to bet that they do it, but there are a number of people who have a sneak bet going on. I want you both to weigh in on. The sneak bet is that Carr gets injured and Jameis Winston finishes the game. This has not been a great statistical year for Carr, arguably his worst in his history. Is this the contest where Carr bounces back and proves that, Pete Carroll's a decent offensive coordinator after all? Or is this the game where he basically proves that both he and Pete Carroll have lost it? And that's it. They can't do it anymore. There's time for a change and all this stuff. And I'm being overly dramatic because it's fun. Whatever.
I assume you mean Pete Carmichael.
Yeah, Carmichael, you mean, not Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's still with the Seahawks.
Right church, wrong pew. Sorry, folks. Right. Yes.
Nope. Yes. Okay. Yes. I, like you, Zenny, I have at times been pretty critical of Pete Carmichael. I think they're trying to fit the classic, round peg and square hole or vice versa. But there are nights when certain players help you to overcome, your own limitations, right? It happens all the time, right? Players, and that's the thing that I think, people who haven't played the game don't always realize. It's not automatons being sent out to execute this game plan, right? Players all the time, both either within the margins of a play design, find things that aren't there, or on the fly create a whole new play, right? So we talked previously on a previous show about what makes Travis Kelce's and Patrick LaVon Mahomes II's connection so special, because probably a third of the biggest plays they've made are plays that they have literally made on the fly Sometimes semi within the designs of the offense, and
sometimes
right, exactly, and sometimes completely out of whole cloth. And while the offense that they're in isn't the world's best, right, isn't the most adaptable or adapted to modern football, and unfortunately, they haven't built yet. Though this could be a good time to start working on it. That kind of mind meld, like the Vulcan mind meld kind of thing, because one, it's a new offense to virtually everybody on the current team, and two, because
I'm doing a failed mind meld. They just can't get as opposed to when that works, which is our minds.
Correct. Yeah. So, and Rashid Shaheed, he and Derek Dallas Carr have at times done some creative second reaction plays together, but they usually follow sort of the standard scramble rules. If you're deep, come back. If you're close, go deep, all those kind of things, and sort of find the open area. They've occasionally made some plays that way. Michael Thomas is back, and hasn't been back long, but he's already finding sort of a little bit of a niche for himself. He's no longer a dominant receiver in the league, but he's still a helpful player. Alvin Kamara also missed time due to his suspension. So there's some legitimate reasons for the Saints sort of getting stuck in the mud at times. They're still finding each other, still figuring each other out on the fly. So I think that's a little bit of it, but I'm going to agree with some of the things that have been said about Pete Carmichael. I wish he had been a little more open-minded and a little more adaptable to the talent, strengths, and weaknesses of the players that are there on the team.
Speaking of which, Jameis Winston, leads me to this question. There's a video post going around Twitter that I have retweeted and liked, as have many thousands of others, and it goes like this. Dennis Allen, the head coach of the Saints, saw Jameis Winston throw for 224 yards and 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter to bring the Saints back from the brink against the Falcons, and yet started Andy Dalton over him, and then went out and got Derek Carr. And the basic point is, who does that? Now, in fairness, Jameis was injured. But let's just say what if they decided that once Jameis was healthy again, they would give him his job back? What if they decided that when that horse collar tackle happened, well, let's say it didn't happen. Let's say he played out the string. Or let's say they said, you know what? This guy did a phenomenal job leading us to 7-2. And he's going to be the automatic starter when we come back. We're going to run the same offense. If they had done that, would the Saints have been in the shape they're in now? Because that would have taken us through 2022, which means you have to back forecast. But but a lot of people asking that question. What do you think?
Well, that's a lot of what ifs, obviously, but that probably also presupposes that we don't.
That's the key part about it.
It probably also presupposes that we don't have Pete Carmichael in place. So we're talking about a lot of things that would be different.
As I do my best Hunchback of Notre Dame impression as he's circling around the molten lava that is in the vat that he's about to pour over the unsuspecting people of Paris. I ask you this. Is it that the Saints really are suffering under 18-44 Dennis Allen? Is that the real problem?
It's a big part of it. I'm not sure why certain people
molten lava. Vinny, have you ever seen Notre Dame? Have you seen the Hunchback?
Years and years ago. I don't really remember much of it though.
Right.
It was a long time. I was young.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. You were saying, Bill. You were saying.
No, I was gonna say, I'm assuming you're talking about probably like the cartoon version, not the original silent film from many, many, many years ago.
But Charles Lawton.
Oh, okay. So you are going back to the okay.
Oh, that one. I thought you were talking about the Disney version.
Remember the scene where he's circling the molten lava? It's a molten lava. He's like,
I've never seen the Charles Lawton version. So far, the only film I've had. I know Lawton's an amazing director. The only thing I've ever saw Lawton part of was the only movie he directed. One of my favorite movies of all time, Night of the Hunter. Wonderful movie. Wonderful. Just a perfect movie. Wonderful movie.
So now that you saved the people of Paris, shame on you. What say you, Bill?
Yeah, the original did star Lon Chaney, right, as Quasimodo, but that's Lon Chaney Sr., the original Lon Chaney, and the original Hunchback of Notre Dame, circa 1923, if my film history is correct, sometime around then. But instead of silent film. But back to sorry, film history buffs, we're going back to football. So for me, the thing that really, really matters is, one, can they find their Jimmy Graham? And I don't mean the current Jimmy Graham. Can they find the Jimmy Graham that was a superstar at the tight end position? So much of this offense improves if they find their Jimmy Graham.
They have him on the sideline.
But he's not the same Jimmy. That's not, the old saying, you don't step into the same river twice. That's not the Jimmy Graham I'm talking about. This is a version of Jimmy Graham, but it's not the version of Jimmy Graham that they need. They need 29, 27-year-old, somewhere in that range, Jimmy Graham, who is a dynamic down the field seam buster.
But you gotta admit that Jameis Winston did a great job of making him look like he was that guy in that scintillating preseason game where he caught that 29-yard touchdown pass and then caught another pass in the end zone to win. Just saying, right? I mean, he's got it in the tank. Is it mainly that Jimmy Graham is a linchpin example of how awful Pete Carmichael's game plans are? They're not really getting him into the game and getting that 29-year-old out of him? Just asking.
Asking. I think there's two things here. While once again, I agree with many of your criticism of Pete Carmichael, the preseason is not the season. That's why they call it the preseason. It is a very different animal. It's, for one thing, teams play literally one, maybe two coverages the whole game, and they tell you which coverages they're playing, right? Nobody's changing up anything. No one specifically game plans.
And they say, hit me with your best shot.
It's pressure testing.
Literally.
It's really what you're doing. You're pressure testing certain things on offense, certain things on defense. Yeah. Your, test of concept, that proof of concept, that kind of stuff. Nobody's really trying to run a defense or run an offense. So it's very different from the
concept. Yeah, proof.
Right. From what you're really.
Whereas I call it proof of poo. I call it proof of poo.
It's very different from what happens in a real football game. And while I think Jimmy Graham is still a legitimate NFL tight end, he's not the Jimmy Graham who is of 10 years ago, or even 7 or 8 years ago. So he's a guy who's going to win hopefully some jump balls in the red zone and things like that, but he's not going to run away from safeties the way he used to. He's just not the player he was. No one is. Like that's not how getting older works, unfortunately, Zenny. We all wish that it did, that you could continue to maintain your physical prowess at the same level where it was once established. I know, I feel it too. But you can still use him better. I still agree he could be better used, though. That's where you and I do agree. He could be better used.
As I do my Harold Hecuba impression, that's all I'm saying.
Don't know who that is.
All I'm saying. Oh, he never watched the Flintstones.
Oh, I have many years ago, but I forget the name.
Harold Hecuba.
I haven't seen the Flintstones in a long time. I know about Fred, Wilma, Barney,
Dino,
Bam Bam, which was also my dad's nickname. When he was young. His nickname was Bam Bam. My dad.
Your dad's nickname is Bam Bam?
Yeah, when he was a kid. Yeah.
Why is your dad's?
Because he was always.
Why was your dad's nickname?
Because he was always very aggressive on the field.
Yeah, and actually, Harold Hecuba wasn't a Flintstones character though. He actually was on Gilligan's Island, but I knew.
Yeah, I had a feeling it wasn't a Flintstones character because I don't remember that name.
You know where I got that mixed up, because on KTVU Channel 2, Gilligan's Island came after the Flintstones. So yeah, the Flintstones and Gilligan's Island, and so I managed to, fuse them. Harold Hecuba was a movie producer who was a bit of a pill, right?
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, that was a massive rancor. Rankle, get out, a kind of a guy you wanted to kick out for the island, which
they did. In essence,
but he was looking. Yeah, he was. But he left them with the idea that he was going to help them. He didn't give a crap about them.
Of course not. Right? He was a classic. Well, yeah, he was a classic egotist. But he was probably. So now we've got some television history. I think that was. I think it was circa
1966.
Yeah, I was going to say sometime probably around that time too. I think that's probably about right. As they were switching over to I think it was a color. Was that their first season in color?
1966.
But now it's television history time. Sorry, kids. But for those who wanted to talk about football, we're going to get back to it. I promise.
Hey, they all go together, folks. I mean, how do you think Roger just got that big contract? Just saying. Do you know he's made $700 million over the course of his career as an NFL commissioner? Wow. Mm-hmm. Yep. TV and football go together like peas and carrots, to steal a line from Forrest Gump. My point is getting back to the Saints. Here is the other alternative view regarding the Saints. All right. That I did offer it a bit of that they have this tremendous game because they came off of a loss. And everything would seem to point to that. It's a party. It's Thursday night. They're wearing all black. Everything else. And I keep wanting to say, yes, this will happen and that'll happen. And so you know what? I'm going to say it. The Saints are going to come marching in. They're going to win. And even though I feel like almost an actor in saying this, but I'll just say it. The Saints will win 21-14. Maybe. All right, now you guys can tell me why you think I'm wrong and I'm being an idiot.
I'm not going to do that.
Oh, why not? It's fun.
Because it would be fun or whatnot, but it's not fun for me.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, do you have a prediction?
I think the Jaguars win by a touchdown.
Oh, because you did say that before. I just wanted to hear him say it. I wanted to hear that come from your mouth. A touchdown for the Jaguars. What say you, Mr. Carroll?
Yeah, I don't think it's. I don't think it's going to be that big. I don't think it'll be that big a lead. I think that the Jaguars will prevail, but I think it'll be a very close game. I'm thinking something more along the lines of, say, maybe 27-23, 3 or 4 points, 27-24.
And you're certain of that, right?
I mean, 3 or 4 points.
You're certain. You're pulling. You're digging for the right result, aren't you?
Somewhere around there. I'd say somewhere between 23, 24 points and say 20, 27. So I think the over-under on that game is probably in the 40s. So I'm going to go over, I think, because I think they had the
and you wrote the book on it, didn't you? Didn't you? Yes. You wrote the book. All right. Now, if anyone has not seen The Verdict in James Mason, you have missed an outstanding performance. I'm just saying. All right. So moving along here, we got to sprinkle a little pop culture here, keep everybody on their toes. What's wrong with the Saints' offensive line?
Injuries.
Go on.
They've got some injury issues, some depth of talent or lack thereof of issues, and also some players that have been misevaluated. I've talked about Trevor Penning more than once on the show, so I guess I don't have to keep hammering away at the things that make him less than a good fit for the kinds of things they are asking him to do.
So wait a minute, Mr. Carroll. Are you saying then, indeed, are you saying that he was a bust? Was Trevor Penning a bust? Is that what
it's too early to decide something like that. I mean, I'm not one of those people that sees a young player have a couple of bad games and calls him a bust. It's not fair, first of all. I think that he's a player that needs to be given help, particularly against top-level pass rushers, and particularly against smaller, more nimble, more agile pass rushers.
But then the question on the floor: would you have taken him with the Saints if you were the Saints? If you were Mickey Moon?
At pick number 19, no. And I talked about this the last time we talked about him. I had him rated about almost an entire round later than that. Now, if you want to take him in the second half of the second, or where I would have really liked him is early in the third. But either way, that would have made more sense, and it would have taken some of the pressure off of you to plug him right in directly and start him immediately. when you take a player at right tackle or left tackle in the first round, you're usually saying this person is a dramatic upgrade over who we already have. We're going to play them immediately. If you take them a little bit later, now you aren't forced, or you don't feel forced to play that player immediately. And he just wasn't ready right out of the box. He came a very dominant run, downhill run game where he didn't often have to deal with elite level pass rushers. And people overreacted to his, I'll use the word antics. People, I think, somewhat overreacted to his antics at the Senior Bowl and other situations where he sort of, kind of pounded his chest and set up sort of a lot of world wrestling kind of things about, what he liked to do and putting people in the dirt and all that kind of crazy stuff.
It's fascinating. I have a question. I am wonder if our colleague, Mr. Lospinuso, would weigh in on what say you regarding what the Saints should have done, or if they're in the right shape of offensive line, keeping in mind that you're seated next to a vaunted, heavily decorated NFL draft expert in Mr. Carroll.
I think the Saints should have emphasized the offensive line during the offseason, whether it's through draft or for free agency, a lot more, especially going to have a Derek Carr who's in his early mid-30s, not getting younger, and you have Jameis Winston who back-to-back seasons has dealt with injury. You need to help out your offensive line. It's so heavily coveted in this league. You look at how the Giants are right now, and they're very porous offensive line. Daniel Jones doesn't have a chance to breathe back there, especially with two quarterbacks. One's older and the other is more injury prone now. You need to have an offensive line, and I don't think they did enough. If the Saints want to compete for a playoff spot, if they feel like they have a legitimate chance to win the NFC South, which in many ways is wide open between them, the Falcons, and the Buccaneers, they got to see if they could try to trade, if possible, they could make a trade in season for someone.
Who is the breakout player of the game? Who's the player that you think that we just didn't see coming, or is that in this contest?
I could see one of the receivers for the Jaguars having a big game. I could see that potentially happen. I think you could see someone on the Jags defense taking advantage of that Saints offensive line. It could be Josh Allen, but it could be someone else.
Wait, dare you say manhandle? Is that the word you're looking for? Manhandle.
Manhandle, yes. Manhandle.
Yes, that's it, my boy. That's it. Yes. You've convinced the jury. You've done it well. Absolutely.
I appreciate it.
Yes. What say you, Mr. Carroll?
I'll narrow it down a little bit. I think Christian Kirk has a big game tonight. And then jumping over to the Saints, another offensive player I think could have a breakout game. I say breakout. I mean, he's broken out in the past. I'll go back to Rashim Shaheed. He's a player who came in initially, as an unheralded player people were looking at as a special teams player. And he was a terrific special teams player. Could cover punts and kickoffs, could return punts and kickoffs. And slowly but surely, people have woken up to him as a potentially special deep threat. I think I think that his ability to literally run away from almost anybody you can imagine will not only help him to make a couple of plays, but I think that as they finally react to that sort of distortion effect that speed has, will also open up some things underneath for people like Michael Thomas and like Alvin Kamara. So I think that using Rashim Shaheed early and often changes the defense enough that now you can find more space in those zones underneath and attack and get good yardage in that sort of 8 to 12 yard area. And it helps to keep them close and in this game.
So moving. Okay, so if you had to look at this crystal ball, well, it's all a crystal ball, isn't it? All right. Tell me, who commits the most penalties? Who makes the most mistakes?
Saints.
I didn't mean to stump anybody. I only bring up.
No, you're not stumping anybody.
The Saints are
Saints. So the Jaguars are better coached and they're better disciplined. That's my stance.
Yeah, once again.
So there we go.
Vinny brought up the offensive line of the Saints, and I'm afraid that both the pressure that comes from a good bunch of pass rushers is it forces some of those guys to try to get out of the blocks a little early. So you're going to see some false starts and some holds. So that's where I think you're going to see the difference is the false starts and holds coming from the Saints offensive line.
Makes a lot of sense to me. It really does. Any thoughts about anything else going on before we call it and get ready for the game?
I think the other thing, what people call hidden yardage.
I want to say congratulations.
I think that
say that again.
Something else will end up being impactful is what people call hidden yardage. Exchanges of punts. What do you get in the return game? Is your punter able to not just kick the ball through the end zone when if you kick from on the other side of the 50, but do they have the ability to, quote unquote, put someone since you're in the Hollywood moon, the coffin corner? Do they have the ability to pin you down deep and not just kick it through for a touchback? So I think the hidden yard.
Excuse me, was that your best John Facenda?
No.
Did I just distinctly hear a hint of John Facenda?
No, I didn't try. I could. I actually have done a much better John Facenda. I was actually a national finalist in a.
Let's hear
in a contest. Let me see.
Okay,
give me a second. I haven't done this in a while, so give me a second. As they take the field, the New Orleans Saints are now facing what for them could be their coffin corner if they are not able to resurrect themselves and survive through the middle of the 2023 season.
So your Sam Spence impression too?
Yeah, Sam Spence has to be part of it. In my mind, they always go together.
Yeah, I think both deserve to be in Canton, honestly. Facenda, the voice of God, and if Facenda is the voice of the speaking voice of God, then Sam Spence is the musical voice of God.
The hearkening of the heralding angels, right? The the person that gave you. Yeah.
Okay. Mom's got noodles, shrimp, and vegetables on for dinner, folks, and you're not invited. But anyway, you are cyber-wise, but not, well, that's not fair to say because you are invited. You two are invited. I didn't admit everybody. Well, no, the three of you watching too. That's 6 people.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, then, potluck it because we don't have a lot of food right now. We have some. No, we have enough. We have to cook more, and I don't want to put a burden on my mom. Anyway, what am I saying? Okay, bottom line. All right. Wow. It's going to be a great game. I think I'm looking forward to it. But before we cut out of here, we're talking about John Facenda. The two of you forgot Autumn Wind is a Pirate.
I didn't forget it
from Sweetie.
But it's been done forever.
Forget it, especially considering Steve
Stable wrote it so long.
Yeah, I that didn't really fit in this situation. I was trying to think of something for the Saints. I should have thought about the Saints going marching in. I should have done that. Yeah, his face is weather beaten. He wears a hooded sash. I know the poem.
Wait, they have Derek Carr with the silver helmet about his and a bristling black
mustache. I know it. I memorized it. I had to do it for the contest.
The country.
A brigand, big and bold. Yes.
And the trees all shake and quiver
and quake as he robs them of their gold. Yes, I know it. I learned. I had to memorize it. Yeah.
He'll knock you around and laugh when he's conquered.
Conquered and won. Yes. Yes. I'm very familiar with that.
That's what you ask you all this question.
Yeah, I had to memorize it.
Is Derek Carr really? You think Derek Carr will go back to the Raiders? Why do I think Derek Carr is better off going back to the Raiders?
Well, the problem is how would you make that work?
Well, you aren't wrong, but that's also because Jimmy G is often injured.
Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody knew that part. But you couldn't make it work salary structure-wise, probably. But
it looks like it's unraveling.
Yeah, because
all right, it's 7:46. Game's about to start.
Yes, it is.
live long. Unless you guys want to do a game recap, up to you.
I mean, you let us know. I'll make myself available after the show. If you,
what say you?
Yes, if you, I'll make myself available after. If you,
since I'm fucking passive aggression.
If you are going to, I'll make myself available. So just let me know.
Yeah. Done. Absolutely. It will happen. We'll have the Saints cheerleaders come in and kidnap Vinny and deliver him right to the Superdome grounds, and he can deliver it from the ground Superdome.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind.
That would mean we have money, folks. That would mean
hopefully.
You know, that will happen. We will grow. We will make it happen. You can have to think. Get tired of falling on your face and looking ugly and having the blood flow all over, and then you're ready to do it again. All right, that's just kidding. Okay, no, we will prevail. All right, okay, everybody. That ends this broadcast. Subscribe to Zennie62 on YouTube. Bookmark OaklandNewsNowBlog.com, and we'll see you after the game. That ends this.